Hello and welcome to Das Nostalgia Podcast, episode 18. I am your host, Anatoly, as always, and today, in the virtual internet Das Nostalgia studio, with me is a very special guest. For your listening pleasure, sir, please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Brian Rubin. I am a longtime DOS fan, video game enthusiast, space game enthusiast, and fellow podcaster and blogger. How you doing?
Excellent. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited because I'm a big fan, man. Seriously, so this is very exciting for me.
No problem. I'm always happy to accept willing volunteers to talk about DOS games, especially DOS games that I am not very familiar with, as is the case with today's topic. But before we get to today's topic, would you like to tell us maybe how you first came in touch with the IBM PC gaming?
Well, I started with Tandy. For some reason, my parents love buying crap from Radio Shack. So my first computer was a TRS-80. That's not DOS, but I'm leading up to that. So I wanted a better computer at some point. So in 1980, I think it was 86, they got me a Tandy 1000EX, which was like an all-in-one thing. It had a floppy drive on the side, built-in office suite called Deskmate, and I got a game with it. The first DOS game I ever got was Starflight. And the reason I got it was because there was a really awesome looking ship on the cover. And I had no idea that this would begin a lifelong love affair, not only with video games, but with space games.
Nice.
Because that game, holy crap.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that shortly.
Yes, we will.
Because that's what our topic is about. I might point out to listeners right up front, when you volunteered to be on this, when you asked to be a guest on this podcast, or when I asked you to be, I don't quite remember how it happened.
I said you should do a podcast on space games, not thinking I would have anything to do with it, and you're like, yeah, you should come on. I'm like, okay, all right.
Yeah. So and you ended up sending me a list which I think was over 110 titles total.
It's pretty much every DOS space game I could find between 1981 and 1997. A DOS game came out in 97, even after Windows XP, 95, which is hilarious.
The last big year was 97, because there's a lot of simultaneous Windows and DOS releases for big games, you know. That's the topic for another podcast. But the thing is, so you sent me like a 117 game list, and I instantly said not happening, because here on Das Nostalgia Podcast we're having trouble discussing like 10 games in under 3 hours. So I guess I asked you to limit it to are we calling it are they officially called space trading sims?
There really isn't like a specific name for these. Some people call them open world space games, space trading games, space economic games, but I tried to limit the list to DOS space games that have elements of trading in them, whether it's an opener, more open game like Elite, or maybe trading is a bit more limited. I tried to find games that had some element where you're trading something. Like some games have trade but don't even involve money, which I thought was kind of fun.
Or some of them are not simulators per se.
Yeah, exactly. Some of them
about half of them, actually. Like I looked.
Yeah, quite a few of them aren't first-person like flight sim type things. So we kind of so here's the interesting thing. I had to do a little fudging with this list because
I saw.
The first game came out in 1983.
Which is funny. I knew nothing about it because it didn't land on DOS till 87, apparently.
Yes, exactly. Which is funny because the second game came out on DOS in 86.
Before, yeah.
Which is a bit... It's the Universe games. And we could talk about these three in like a whole... in a combined thing, because I've only touched upon them, really. I've only dabbled with them.
Because I did not know they existed. Because I guess DOS wasn't exactly a prevalent platform for them, as we just discussed, and I was quite blown away because they are open world space trading games pre-Elite.
Yeah, and they're very detailed. Like the funny thing is, I tried playing the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I found a DOS version.
Right.
It comes with 4 exe files,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know which order to run them in. And so, like, one's for a starport, one's for a construction ship thing, and one's for a pilot, and one's another pilot. And so I couldn't figure out, like, are you supposed to run these in a specific order and set up your pilot, then set up your ship? And I tried to do that, and it didn't work. So I've barely dabbled with Universe. Universe 2, I actually got running. I played a little bit.
That looks like a lot more accessible game.
It is, but it's
weird graphical choice. I guess they wanted to go high risk because the second game I would assume not a lot of people actually have heard about this, but like it's like a high res black and white mode.
Yeah,
and it's mouse controlled as well.
It looks like an early Mac game. Remember the early Mac games were just black and white? Mm-hmm. It looks like that, and that game is obtuse. Now, these are Did you ever play the Rules of Engagement Starship Sims?
No.
Okay, well, those are amazing. That could be a whole nother podcast. Those are amazing capital ship sims where you're like in control of like almost every system of a starship. These games are the prequels to those.
Oh.
They take place in the same universe. But those games you're in the military, and these games you're just like a fella with a ship flying around. And these games are there's 2 major factions in them, and I think you can be one or the other. They're very obtuse and convoluted. Like, I was playing Universe, and like, so I'm like, oh, I want to go to this other planet. Okay. ETA 2 hours. Okay, is that in real time?
Yeah, that's one thing. I went into like one Russian abandoned website that covers like all. They just want to grab like every game ever, but they also want to give a detailed look for every game ever, which is pretty useful when stumbling upon sort of some really ancient titles. And one thing that the description for First Universe mentions is you can't play without the manual. Like, you have to read the manual.
And I did try, and it's wow, it's crazy. It's not an easy game. I would not recommend anyone. I'm going to probably do a Let's Play of it, but it's one of those games where I can't really recommend anyone go back. If they're used to like a more modern UI, do not go back and try these because, oh my God. They're like almost Sundog levels of... Oh, and Sundog isn't on here. Oh, I don't think it ever came out for DOS. That's probably why. But yeah, that's almost Sundog levels of obtuseness. It's like, oh my God.
But from a historical point of view, it's interesting. That's an open world 3D, and it even has like wireframe 3D ships. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I was like, one of the things had like 10 ships you could choose from, and I never got past like choosing one of them. It was like I was reading a brochure about each ship. And yeah, there were wireframe graphics, which in 1983 or 80,
it's 87, but let's assume, it's a port. If you look at the Atari versions, they still have all of that. So it's
I tried
really
playing the Atari version. It's the same thing. It was 4 different files. I'm like, I don't know which one to be. I'm so confused. So I moved on from there. So let's move on from there. Those are great from a historical perspective, but people don't play them. Don't look them up. They're crazy. The one that's fascinating is Elite, and that's the one everyone talks about. Is really, and it's kind of a shame that Universe is kind of forgotten. But Elite made things more accessible.
Yeah, Elite is not forgotten in any way. I actually have. I can.
No, I mean Universe is forgotten in the shadow of Elite. That's
right. Obviously, but like here we have 2 games that are so close and so revolutionary so early on, and one predates the other, and one is. Universe is forgotten, I guess, almost completely. Never mind the two fucking sequels.
Right.
And. But Elite, which came out on originally BBC Micro in '84,
yes.
I believe, and landed on DOS in its first DOS version in '87.
And then it had Elite Plus, and I think 89 or 90, which added garage shading or whatever, and
Well, honestly, Elite
something.
Plus is the one that you should be playing if you're on DOS.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
the one you should play, really.
yeah, because First Elite is a bit too hard on eyes and ears.
I'll be
Uh,
honest, that's the one I played. I played Elite Plus.
I
Didn't play the
actually
original.
played Elite originally on the ZX Spectrum, one of its
Oh,
more popular sort of incarnations, at least in Europe, when I was a kid. And I was always really bad at Elite, but I managed to play a chunk of it because it was actually pretty accessible. Like you could figure out the controls, you could figure out what to do without the manual. And sort of play around a little bit badly. Never get anywhere past mostly harmless and
because combat in that game is cray.
just well hell combat or no combat. I think the docking is just is just is it was a vicious move to like and to assume that okay, we're so many years into whatever and the ships don't have any kind of automatic like
I know,
docking
right?
help like you. All right, I'm trailing off here, but yeah, I played Elite on the Spectrum, which is really impressive because it's a 48K machine with the Z80 for everything.
Right?
Like it has nothing, just a straight up video output. There's no buffering, there's no hardware sprites, there is no nothing. Beeper sound and so you had to do everything. It's still impressive how huge that game is. But and I think I've mentioned Elite at least a couple of other podcasts, but and I don't think is there any person who doesn't know what Elite is. But Elite is open world 3D space trading sim. It's a simulator. It's
Yeah.
It's arcadey, but by many standards now. But it actually implements a lot.
It did not. It did not feel arcadey back then. It
No,
really
no.
didn't.
Even now, I mean, it has like all kinds of crazy shit, like gravity. I think it even has right from it has a gravity pool from planets and stations, or is that in the sequel?
I think so.
I forget. I read the whole
The
giant
sequel
thing.
definitely does. The
Oh, the
sequel
sequel has like
definitely
all kinds
that.
of crazy shit, but like original Elite for its sort of simplicity. I mean, there is even a version for Nintendo. Do you ever seen a Nintendo version?
Of Elite?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I didn't know
it's
there
a
was a Nintendo.
crazy fucking Nintendo version for Elite. But
Oh
the
my
best version of
God.
Elite is actually for Acorn Archimedes computer nobody ever has heard of.
I'm right there. I've never heard of the Acorn Archimedes. You'd think
Yeah,
I'd hear of this thing.
but the reason
Oh.
it's the best version is because it wasn't made till 1991. So it's a 16-bit machine. So it was the last Elite, I think, is the. Didn't I just discuss it on a previous podcast? I might have. I might have cut it out or something. But Elite is the amount of for official ports made, commercial ports for a single game. Because I think there's about 30 altogether. If not
Oh my-
30, it's like 27.
I believe it.
yeah.
I mean, it really set the stage for just about every game that came after it.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's like if there is one revolutionary game, well, if there isn't one, but if like you cannot call Elite anything but revolutionary in so
absolutely.
many areas.
absolutely. And it's funny, like I know people like say docking is too difficult and Elite Dangerous today, and I just want to tell them go back and try docking in the
Yeah,
original.
please.
Go for it.
Can we talk about this a little bit? No, well, I touched on a little bit, but to people who've never played the original Elite, the docking is like a recreation, is inspired by 2001 Space Odyssey, where
Right,
shit
it
just
even plays-
spins into space. It only plays the Blue Danube
Exactly.
in some versions. It doesn't in DOS and Elite Plus and some other things, which I think is really cheesy. But so there's a sort of I don't know what the scientific name of that shape is because I didn't do well in school. But there's a
I don't either, but
space
it's a
space stations.
polyhedron
Yeah,
thing.
something with a lot of surfaces.
With
but
a
it's-
tiny, tiny little docking window that
Yes.
you have to get your ship through, and you have to match. And you don't have rudder pedals or anything like you do
Nope.
these days. You just had your stick, and so you had to match. You had to match the rotation of
Perfectly.
the station manually, and it's spinning kind of quickly. So you're like,
While you're flying
That's-
into it, you have to make sure that your rotation matches completely. Otherwise, you just
Mm-hmm.
hit the edges and you die. And you
And
can
you
only
die.
save when you're inside the station. So, yeah, cruel move. But it was made at a time when games were really like
A lot crueler.
For
A
like
lot
hardcore
crueler.
people. It
Thing
made
is,
you
it was
work.
a point of pride. Once you got good
yeah.
at docking, it was a point of, like, I could do this, man. Like, I don't need a docking computer. I mean, the game has one. You can, once you can afford it, you can buy a docking computer.
Yeah, but by that point you
But-
don't need it.
Yeah, by that point, you're like, I got this, man. No worries. Woo! You know, right in the slot. But yeah, that's probably one of the few things people will remember about the original so much is the docking. I mean, the combat was just terrible. I mean, it was just not as bad as the sequel, which we'll get to, but because the combat in that
the combat
woo!
is you rotate and you point where you want to shoot and you shoot.
And there's no left or right, so you can't slide left or right.
Right,
If you're
you can only
off a little bit. You have to roll and then pull up, and then roll and then pull up, and you're like, God.
But at least, thank God for that. It also established that it's the first game, well, because it's like a first 3D space game, at least that I know of, that also had that radar implemented that have since been copied, and I think just about every single space game ever, where the ships in relation to you are actually shown as a line coming out or in. It's really hard to explain it. If somebody doesn't understand, I'm sorry.
It's a 3D radar that shows
on the flat plane though. Like the radar
it shows
is flat.
Target. Yeah, exactly. Yes. But it has lines going above or below the plane
and in relation
showing
to
whether
you.
a target is above you or below you or behind you, above you. You know, I mean, representing 3D spaceflight in a 2D monitor isn't the easiest thing. So, you know, that for its time is just, I mean, that's why it's still copied today. That's why the new Elite uses it. Let's say all these other games use it, because it's just so simple and effective. It's like our brains just get it, you know, so it's perfect.
Yeah, it's a great, and it's a huge game, procedurally generated. It's procedurally generated from the same seed, so it's the same universe every time. But it's gigantic, and if you think by the 1984 standards, I mean, for the longest time it was like one of the biggest games like ever. So you know, size wise,
I'm not sure if our next game is even bigger size wise. The next Starflight. Let's talk about Starflight a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think. Do you have anything else to add to Elite, and will you recommend it?
I never got far enough to trigger the story in Elite, because I would always either die or just get frustrated and move on.
Here's the thing, and I think like when a lot of people today like praise Elite, you have to take that with a grain of like salt for all the nostalgic feelings. Like Elite is a very tough and unfriendly game. Like it doesn't want you to win ever. It mocks you openly by assigning the harmless status to you. You have to make it you basically would need to make it you are given a status depending on how well you do in the game and how well you perform in combat, from harmless all the way to elite, hence the title. And you know, you're lucky if you ever get to mostly harmless.
Which I think is hilarious, because they're both kind of insulting.
Yeah.
You're not super harmless now. You're just kind of mostly harmless. Yeah. You're still a waste.
Yeah, like it's a tough game. It's a really difficult and unforgiving and very unfriendly game. It's designed to be as such. It's like that by design. So I don't know. Like, I will recommend it. Well, people who've played it obviously have fond memories of it and can play it, but to a newcomer, I feel that it can be a bit too cruel.
Oh, I don't know if I'd recommend this to a new player today. Yeah. Like even one of the newer ports, like was it Elite?
There's so many.
And Pioneer, the newer ones. Even those are just kind of eye-bleedingly difficult at times. You know, that I think that's one of the reasons Elite Dangerous is doing it so well, because it remembers its history, but it also strives to be more fun and accessible to a new audience.
Right. Yeah, you still need to dock, but you can kind of you have help docking. I saw some footage. I don't have a machine powerful enough to run it, but it looks beautiful, and it kind of looks like a modern day Elite.
It really does. And docking the slot is a lot bigger. There's two sides of it now, and one has green lights, so you know which side to go in. And it's just the space station does not spin as quickly. So it's nowhere near as, I mean, you still got to learn it, but it's nowhere near as much of a challenge.
Right.
Thank goodness, really, because you don't want people like rage quitting.
Yeah.
That's no fun.
Yeah, back in the day when you had like a When you play Delete on wireless computers, that loaded off tapes, and you needed, like 10 minutes to load it, and you couldn't
exactly.
save, and all you had is 5 tapes to play all together. You did sit down, and also were like 8 years old. You did sit down and put the time in, but nowadays, no.
There's too much to play these days, and there's too much good stuff.
Yeah.
I know I don't have the patience I did when I was 10 or 11. I don't, but I have more games to play too.
That's true. So let's move on to Starflight.
Oh, the big one, the best one, in my opinion. Starflight, for those of you who don't know, is a top-down space adventure game set in a very large open universe that takes place in the 31st or 32nd century. You are given a ship by the people of Arth, not Earth, Arth, and are supposed to save the universe. I'm not going to spoil. Well, do you care about spoilers for a 30-year-old game?
No. Well, shit. I mean, it depends.
Because that game has one of the biggest twists I've ever encountered in gaming.
All right, so save it.
Okay. I'll save that part. But basically, there's a race of really evil aliens bent to destroying the universe, and you have to stop it. And basically, you do this by improving your ship, by meeting other aliens and talking to them and getting information out of them. In a way, there hasn't been a game like it, except maybe for its sequel and a couple of others that just give the first time you look at the star map and realize you can go to all these different colored dots that are full star systems. And you just like to have this just feeling of awe, like, oh my God, there's this whole universe out there. And the trade in the first game is quite simple. It's basically you go to a planet and you find minerals or you find like artifacts and such. And you can trade that stuff back at your starbase for better equipment for your ship, for more credits, to train your crew. Because it's also a role-playing game. You have a custom crew. And they have specific stats.
Well, yeah, I was gonna note that. Like, that's the first of a lot of the games that are coming up on your list. Actually, do have sort of RPG elements pertaining to the crew specifically.
Yeah, and this one was probably the first even RPG that I ever played. I'd never been, I'd never played anything with personal stats or anything like that, but the game made it easy to understand. Like it was not hard for my 13-year-old brain to grok any of it. If you're a new player now and you want to go back to it, it's hard to recommend it because it's very archaic. It only uses, I think it uses for the most part the arrow keys, the numeric keypad, and like the enter key. There's no mouse support at all. The only time you type anything is when I think when you select a planet for colonization. I think you can name it, but I think that's it. So for the most part, you're selecting number keys, like for responses for to talk to aliens, or you're using the up and down, left and right keys to move your ship and to move your all-terrain vehicle when you land on planets. That was one of the amazing things about that game is you can land on most of the planets in the game.
Right. Can we talk about like the world and like a graphical representation a little bit?
Right. The graphics were in a way very crude, but some of it at the time
is pretty cool.
It was amazing. Like you'd land and you'd see the planet slowly take up your entire screen, and it would have these like polygonal.
It's like a 3D wireframe kind of landscape that like folds. I don't fucking know how to describe it, but it's clearly 3D. It's really well done, and just the general sort of like when you talk to aliens, you sort of got like little representations, like almost like Wasteland style.
I remember this is one of the few games, if I recall, because the Tandy 1000EX, like most PCs, had a one node bleep 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 thing, but the Tandy had like a three
voices,
little synth thing. And there were a few games that actually used that. And when they did, you're like, wow, this is the most amazing sound I've ever heard in my life. At least back then. Until you got an ad-lib card and then everything changed. But yeah, this game is basically an exploration, kind of story-driven. It's very open, the fact that you do have kind of a goal, but and there is kind of a timer, but you can also kind of just go off and go, oh, I'm going to land on this planet. Oh, look, there's a ruin. Oh, look, there's an artifact that'll improve my ship. Oh, look, there's some minerals I'm going to mine. I'm going to mine those and take that back to my base and sell it. You can just spend a lot of time just wandering around.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the joy in that game is not only improving your ship and improving your crew, who become total badasses by the end of the game. It's the amazing races you meet in that game. The Ulhek, the Velox, the Spemen, just really unique, very specific races that are very different from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to treat each of them a specific way. Like one race, you always had to be mean to, or else you wouldn't get anything done with them. One race, you had to be nice to, or you wouldn't get anything done. In one race, you could never even talk to them. Just be like, fuck you. That's it. That's the Gazertoid. If you remember the Gazertoid, they were water dwellers, and they would just always shoot at you. One of my favorite memories of that game is after you beat the game, you can still play. Not like the second one, which was weird. But in the first game, you can keep playing after the main story is over. And you have this badass ship with cloaking devices, all kinds of shit. And one of my favorite things would just be to find Gazertoids and just have them shoot at me and never be able to hit me, and just imagine how pissed off they are, because I'm shooting at them and they can't hit me ever because I'm cloaked. And I just laughed and laughed. You fucking Gazertoids. But they were important too. Like every race is important because you needed to get certain bits of information from them to advance the story and to advance, your own, knowledge. So every race was important in a certain way. There was no wasted race in this game. So I think even today it is still a groundbreaking game because I found very few games that impart just the feeling of awe and exploration and discovery that Starflight had. Mm-hmm. Even today, I think the most recent game that has touched me in that way, that sounds weird, is Distant Worlds, because Distant Worlds has these massive living universes where you can just always discover something, and it's fascinating. So that kind of comes close, but Starflight, to me, is really the pinnacle of space adventure gaming. It didn't have a lot of trade, but it had enough of a trade element. With trading minerals in for credits and trading in artifacts for credits, and then improving your ship. That's kind of a common theme with a lot of these trading games is you use the money to improve your ship. Not really you or your crew, but your ship. But some games have a crew that you're improving. But for the most part, you're improving your ship with better lasers and better shields, and that it's a joy to run into a race where in the beginning of the game you're just like, oh God, please don't hurt me. They're like, what? You got something? You got something to say? I will fuck you up. So the progression in that game is really a joy. And again, if I don't want to spoil it for you, but the twist in that game, basically, I'm not spoiling anything because this is kind of common knowledge. You have to kind of commit genocide to win the game.
Uh-huh.
But to commit the genocide, you have to kind of commit another form of genocide. And once you realize you have to do that, it's gut-wrenching. Absolutely gut-wrenching. And no other game has hit me emotionally the same way that way did. Because the beauty of it is that it's so understated. It's not told in this big cutscene or anything like that. When you realize this, it's in a log you find on Old Earth, I think. Or somewhere, but I think it's Old Earth. You find this log entry and you're reading it, and I had to read it 4 times before it really dawned on me what I was reading. And then the rest of the game, I was just had this weight on me. I was like, oh my God. No other game has done that to me. No other game. So you guys can get, I'm just going to pimp here a little bit if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. You guys can get Starflight 1 and 2 on GOG for
That's what I was going to say. I was it's on GOG, so
for $6. It's worth getting if you want to see a very important piece of space gaming history.
Mm-hmm. Just generally a very important piece of DOS gaming. It's a very sort of now not so much remembered much anymore, but it's remembered by people who know DOS gaming.
Yeah, it's
for a reason.
Still influential. The most recent, like Star Control, there's a new Star Control coming out.
Is
Star
there?
Control 2, there is. Stardoc's working on it. And
Oh, well.
Star Control, and Star Control has a lot to owe to
Oh,
Star.
yes, absolutely.
So a lot of these top-down space adventure games have a lot to owe to Starflight. So just for a piece of gaming history, you owe it to yourself to at least try it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want the most modern version, I'm gonna just, it's a little slight tangent.
Mm-hmm.
The most modern version is for the Sega Genesis. It's prettier, it's more detailed in a lot of ways. Like when you're landing on a planet, remember in the DOS game, the computer lands you.
Uh-huh.
In the Genesis game, you land manually. So you have to actually apply thrusters to land. It's amazing. But the thing is, the first time I landed, I didn't know that. So my ship goes boom, then bounces, boom, and like 70% damage. Like, what the fuck just happened? Oh shit, I had to land myself. So if you can track down like a emulated version of the Genesis version, and if you have an interest, it's kind of worth it just to see the difference between the two, because they did actually, I'm not gonna say improve the game, but enhance it quite a bit.
I'll definitely check.
Genesis
Gonna be checking it out. I have a Retron 5, so all the more reason to actually try something.
The Genesis version is probably the most refined version of Starflight, but that you can just get the DOS version, which is the version I played. The version that this is a DOS podcast, so that's what we'll focus on GOG for $6. It's worth it just to play around with it and see what they did with 2 low density goddamn floppies back in 1986. Because this game was on 2 low density floppies, and they had 100 solar systems, and over 100, and most of them had at least one planet, and a lot of them had planets you could actually land on and drive around the like entirety of the planet if you wanted to. You'd have to like refuel and leave and refuel and leave. You'd have to like take off a few times and land a few times, but you could do it, you know. So it was really like Elite. It was really an amazing technical achievement for its day, like just incredible.
Yeah, I will also recommend it.
Yeah. Oh, so good. So the next game, when I first saw the next game in, remember Egghead Software? I don't know if you remember Egghead Software, but back in the day, Egghead was like the place to buy DOS games, at least in my neck of the woods. And that and like EB, but EB was in a mall far away. So Egghead was the thing. And this game looked like a sequel to Starflight. So I jumped on it. It isn't. It was also made by Electronic Arts, I believe, but it was not a sequel to Starflight. It's a little different. And instead of this massive thing of solar systems, you're in one.
Shall we say what the name is?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's called Sentinel Worlds 1. Future Magic.
Weird title, especially considering that there is only ever Sentinel Worlds
there was
1.
Kind of, sort of a sequel type thing.
So I've read, but it's still not called that.
It's not. Yeah, there wasn't ever a 2 or anything. But this game takes place in one solar system, I believe, with multiple planets. But the planets are very detailed, and you actually. It's a different scale, but at the same time, when you land on a planet, you're actually controlling individual team members. So instead of just one ATV going several miles, you're controlling individual team members going into individual buildings, trying to, solve the story. And you can have, I believe, up to 5 members, one of which could look like the Terminator. I'll always remember that. One guy he looked like Arnold with the sunglasses, which I will never forget. And in a lot of ways, it was similar to Starflight in that a lot of the combat was top-downy, and landing on the planet was top-down, and even controlling individual team members. You didn't even see your team members. Your team members were like hollow dots that you moved around a map very slowly. But the best part about it was when you orbited a planet, like you saw the planet through your front window. And you'd be flying over it, and it would play this like 3-tone, the Tandy, the 3-tone music, and you're like, I just want to sit here for a while and stare at this planet beneath me. I want to believe I'm on this spaceship. But this game also had traits similar to Starflight in that, you would find things to sell. You would find, minerals, I believe, and stuff. I don't remember this one as much as Starflight. This one was brutally difficult. I believe I got to a point where I could not get past this one encounter, and I had upgraded my guys and their equipment and everything as much as I could with the money I had, and if I recall correctly, I could not get past this one encounter. So I don't finish a lot of games. I finished Starflight maybe 4 times. I never finished this one because I couldn't get past this one part. This game is pretty fucking difficult, but it's also pretty amazing. The sad thing is it's not available anywhere digitally.
Right.
You can't buy this on GOG, which is a shame because it's not a bad game. It's just crazy hard.
I've never played it. Like I barely even heard of it. I think all I've heard of it is like I know it's an RPG. It's more of an RPG than anything else. And
yeah, it is more RPG-ish than Starflight. Yeah,
and it has a crew that's essentially your party to control, and that's about as my knowledge of that game goes.
Right. I mean, it's a very good game. It's very detailed, but it moves like when you're on the planet to move guys around, it moves so slowly because you have to move every individual guy like a few steps, I think, and then you have to turn a corner and then move a few steps and then turn another. It's kind of maddening. Back in the day, when you had more patience, it's like, okay, I've got 8 hours before school. I'll just that's fine. But now, fuck it, I got to work in the morning. I'm gonna go play something else. I don't got time for moving you 3 feet. So. Yeah, this is a hard one to recommend to more modern gamers because it's very difficult and very obtuse. But a good game. A good game. If you're interested in space gaming history and DOS space gaming history, this is one to look up. Because it was written who did Carl Buter. He did something else. He did a few other things. What else did he do? God, I'm trying to remember. He did other things, but Earth orbit stations. He did a bunch of crazy stuff. Spellcraft. He did a bunch of crazy stuff in the 80s and early 90s. Same guy behind Hard Nova.
Well,
which is the kind of sort of sequel to this, but yeah. So we'll just kind of gloss over that since I barely played it. And have you played Hard Nova?
Nope.
Hard Nova is not officially the sequel to this. To Sentinel World's One Future Magic, but it is so similar.
Spiritual
in so
successor.
Yeah, is so similar in so many ways that it's worth playing if you like. Back in the day, I played a little of it, and it was even more difficult than Sentinel. So I never got far in it because it was harder. I was like, oh my god, no, I can't do this. So yeah, that came out 2 years later, I think in 1990. So that game, unless you're a collector or an enthusiast or a historian, I don't know about that one. But it's got trading like the other one, so I put it on the list. But Hard Nova is hard. It's hard. It's hard
Nova.
Yeah, it is hard. It's very difficult. That I recall. Like, I never got far in it. And I don't remember much of it because I'm like, fuck this. I like almost virtually flipped the table because that's how fucking difficult it was.
Wow.
So moving on from that, we are still in 1988. At this point, you remember SSI. They were wonderful. They had a lot of like Dungeons and Dragons RPGs.
The Gold Box series.
The Gold Box, exactly. So I guess at some point someone said we should do one of these in space. So that's where Star Command comes in. Now you might recall, if you know anything about the history of DOS or Windows gaming, that there was an RTS in the mid-90s called Star Command. This has nothing to do with the other.
There's also Star Command Deluxe, right? Which this also has nothing to do with.
Nothing at all to do with it. I mean, I think Star Command Deluxe was the enhancement to the original RTS, and then there was Revolution. That was a confusing series.
Who knows? Basically, what we're trying to say is this game has nothing to do with other games called Star Command.
Nothing at all. Came out in 1988. It's also kind of more primarily an RPG.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like a Gold Box RPG from the looks of it.
In space.
Yeah, in space, and like the battles don't look like they do in Gold Box RPG. I mean, for a reason, obviously, but
yeah. Like it's kind of the precursor. I kind of liken it as a precursor, sort of, to the Buck Rogers RPGs that came a couple years
which
later.
do look like gold bucks,
Yeah.
because they are.
Yeah, exactly. But with this game, it's similar to Starflight in some ways, that you have a custom crew, and you kind of have a custom ship, and you put it all together, and you go out there and you have to, like, it's in some ways it's even more detailed than Starflight, because in this game, like in Starflight, you like had a one race and you made him the scientist, and you had another guy and you made him the navigator. But in this game, your characters can have 4 classes, like pilots, marines, and soldiers. So that even varies things up even a little more. And this you can also this has the more detailed combat, with you're dealing with the individual characters in combat situations, but you still have space combat. And there's also trade in the other, like similar to the other games, where you find shit and you sell shit and you buy shit, and like that whole trading circle. So this game is even a little more obtuse than Starflight, in my opinion. Even though this came out 2 years after Starflight. I played a lot of it, but I don't remember it that well, because I just don't think it was that super memorable. I mean, it wasn't bad. It just didn't have the same effect that Starflight did. And I think that was not fair.
Right.
Because I was comparing it to Starflight, even though this is a more linear experience. Like, this has specific missions and stuff. And you don't have to go out right away and do them. You can go off and do other things, but like, it was still had that more linear structure. And so I think I unfairly at the time compared it to Starflight, but I still played quite a bit of it. So this is a good game. Sadly, it's also not available anywhere digitally, which is a shame. How great would it be if God got more SSI games? They have a good deal now, but there's so many more they could get.
But it's great. I mean, I assume they. Well, I never assume, but I mean, they like got quite a big chunk of their library. I'm actually surprised by the amount of
it's so great
of
it's
how
so
many
great.
of SSI's games they've released.
I know.
So
Anytime there's an SSI game on GOG bought, just it's an insta buy for me, because I love SSI, anything really, just from the age of whatever, rifles or tanks or whatever, to whatever else. Just so great.
So maybe one day. I cannot speak for that game. I have never played it. I've only seen screenshots of it. I think once or twice in my life.
Well, yeah, this game is really obscure. Like, I don't think a lot of people would probably remember it. And if I'm wrong, please tell me. But when I mention this game, people think the RTS from the mid '90s. I'm like, no.
Yeah, that probably isn't helping.
Yeah, it's not. It's not the most catchy of titles. Star Command. I mean,
Yeah.
Starflight isn't the most catchy of titles either, but I don't know. Star Command feels even less catchy. I don't know.
Star Command just feels like a title of an RTS.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. So after that, in 1989, we have a game I don't think either of us played,
Nope.
even though it's kind of a big one. Like, I know a lot of people who have played this and have very fond
Did they?
memories of Space Rogue. I know a bunch of people who played Space Rogue by Origin,
Interesting.
and a lot of them really loved it. And I for some reason, I completely missed this game. I don't know how. I'm gonna play it eventually, but I somehow completely missed it. But this game, it's not a roguelike. I know that word means that these days, but this is not a roguelike. It's kind of precursory Wing Commander-y almost. I mean, Chris Roberts, I think he actually did kind of work on this. I think he had something to do with it. I don't think he was like the guy behind it, but I think he had I think he might have worked on it before Wing Commander. But this is kind of pre Wing Commander Origin space trading RPG thing, and apparently it's quite good. I know a lot of people who just love this game, and I don't know how I missed it.
I don't even know what it looks like, to be honest with you.
It's actually got elements of first person spaceflight.
Really?
Apparently, yeah. Again, I never played it.
No, I've never even seen screenshots of it, to be honest. But what I have seen, especially lately, because I've been looking through a lot of old MS-DOS ads, and the ad for it is the same as the box art. This game has the most incredible box art.
It makes no sense.
It's called
no
Space
sense.
Rogue, and
Right.
on the cover there's a very handsome 80s gentleman in like a leather jacket
Yeah.
holding a helmet.
He's kind of got Rick Springfieldy hair.
Yeah, he's
little
got
bit.
that. He's about to like a break into like a shitty 80s pop love song. He even has that facial expression, really. Like there's just something about it. Like he belongs in Top Gun, kind of vibe to it. It's really weird. Why?
I think he's wearing two jackets. Oh my god.
I don't
He's
even
wearing
know.
two
I'm not.
jackets.
I don't want to look at it because I'll just end up laughing for 5 minutes. But
It's really funny, you guys. It's basically a guy in a leather jacket with like leather gloves.
you know what? I'm gonna make that on YouTube when this goes up on YouTube. I'm just gonna make that single image the background for the whole
Totally.
duration of the
Totally. Just put
podcast.
this as the background. He's holding what looks like a dirt bike helmet that someone glued
like stripes on.
like an RC antenna on this, like one of those big rubbery black antennas. Someone glued that to the side. You know, he's holding that helmet. He looks really serious. Like,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
he wishes he had Jesse's girl.
Yes.
Really badly.
Yeah. Exactly. see what I'm telling you? Like, it's really weird. It's a really weird cover for a game.
He's
It's called
got a
Space
belt
Rogue. He doesn't
going
look
through
like
one
a
of-
Space
He's got
Rogue
like
to
a
me.
belt/lanyard going through. It's not even a full lanyard. It's a belt that goes down. I'm looking at a blow up of the cover now. It's a belt going through, like, you know those jackets, they have the holes in the shoulder that you can sling
Yes.
things through, whatever. He's got what looks like a cheesy 80s leather, well, it is 80s, leather belt going through one of them. So it kind of looks like a lanyard, like a Chewbacca type lanyard, but you can tell it's a fucking belt. And it ends at his midsection. So it's like, why do you have this? It's like someone just threw this fucking shit together. Guys, he's got like a scarf that like a World War I flyer would wear. Why do you have that in space?
I don't know. That
Yeah,
whole
it's
thing.
this-
There's nothing rogue or space about
No.
it.
No, the only thing that's spacey about it is there's some planets behind him.
Yeah,
Otherwise, he could be doing like a BMX dirt bike challenge right now, for all I know. You know,
I mean,
don't see a
he
spaceship.
like to me, it always looked like I was like he's just about to like do some stunts to the danger zone in the background. Like it's like he just has that, and even his face, like it's weird, and like they clearly got a dude that like let's find like a model. You know what I mean? Like let's find a model for this game. Like the game is called fucking Space Rogue. Draw a spaceship and a fucking explosion behind it. I don't know, something. Like something that's not that.
It's kind of funny. On a slight tangent, we had some of the guys behind the new Descent game on our podcast recently, and they were talking about the box cover for. Remember the game Starlancer?
I remember the game, but I cannot picture the box art.
The box cover originally was supposed to be this awesome looking spaceship shooting another spaceship, but somehow in the 11th hour it got changed to what looked like a spacey romance novel with a guy and a girl just kind of standing there looking alluring.
Oh,
Made
boy.
no sense. That's kind of what this reminds me of. Like, why? It makes no sense. So that's probably what we know about the game, folks.
Yeah, pretty
is
much.
the cover
If you
is
like it,
ridiculous.
please leave us a comment or something. But I think I've got enough enjoyment out of just looking at the cover.
Now that I think of it, I'm gonna add. I do weekly Let's Plays on my site of different games, and I'm gonna add that to the rotation. I'm gonna put Space Rogue in there somewhere because
Good.
holy crap!
Well, let me know. Let me know what you think.
Oh, I'm excited about it because again, so many people I know like really dug this game. But moving on to another game in 1989, let's talk Starflight 2. This actually has the word trade in the title. Starflight 2 Trade Routes of the Cloud Nebula. This game came out 3 years after the original and added crazy ass trade system. Like, did you ever play this one?
Nope, not even touched it. I don't even know what
Okay.
it looks like. Again,
Okay,
it happens
the
to be
graphics-
a common trend I see with space trading games myself.
The graphics are a bit improved from the original. The difference is the universe is, I think, a bit larger. It's got a giant nebula in the middle that could like totally kill your crew members. Certain crew members, certain races of crew members will totally go insane if you stay in the nebula too long. I'm not even kidding.
Wow.
But it had a trade system. It added like cities on the planet. Like in the original game, when you landed, there weren't any like intelligent life. There was like animals and ruins and minerals.
Yep.
In the second game, you had cities with like they were like planets that like actually had sentient cultures on them. And you could learn about their culture, but you could also trade with them to get specific artifacts, specific equipment. And sometimes the trade was really elaborate. Like at one point I needed this one specific thing. And to get that thing, I had to go to another race to trade something else for it. But for that thing, they wanted me to go to another race to trade something else. And then they wanted me to go to it. So I had to go to like 6 different planets, if I recall, to circle back to get this one thing. So it's kind of crazy.
Wow.
But you can also trade other things at the cities and trade centers, like equipment and money and fuel. The nice thing, I can't say that because that spoils the first game. Never mind. But this game was a bit more detailed than the first one because of the trade system, and there was also time travel in this one, which was really wonky because one of the races, like there was a race in the first game, I think they were called the Spemen, and there were these gelatinous like unicell looking things, and they were totally weak. They were totally wimps. But you start the second game and they've got like this crazy technology. They're kicking your ass. They're taking your money, and they're like, what? So you find out, I'm going to spoil this one little bit. They traveled forward in time, got this amazing technology, and then came back with it. So you got to figure out how they do that, do the same thing, come back, and then kick their ass. And they're like, oh God, I'm sorry. What do you need? Oh, God. So they eventually end up being the wimps they were in the first game. But yeah, so the second game has several elements to it that the first game didn't, like the trading and like the time travel. It would have been, I think the second game could have been better than the first if it didn't end. Like Starflight 1, once you finish the main story, you can keep flying around. You can keep discovering planets. You can keep, the second game, you finish the story, you get a screen that says the end. DOS problem. Like, fuck. I wanted to keep playing that. Shit. So that's like the one downside to that game is that it fucking ends. And the thing is, you can't find, there's no Genesis version of that. I think the best version you could probably get is maybe the Amiga version. That might be the most refined version of Starflight 2. Maybe. But the nice thing about Starflight 1 and 2 is for the $6 on GOG, you get them both. You get them both, which is really nice because it would have been kind of silly to charge $6 for one of them, I think.
Right.
So it's really nice that they threw them in together. And I don't know if you recall the copy protection schemes for these two games. I didn't mention that in the last one, but in the first one, you had a code wheel. Do you remember code wheels? Some games had these.
Yeah. I remember code wheels really well.
Yeah. For folks that don't, a code wheel it would tell you 2 different things. And you line that up, those 2 different things on the code wheel, and then in the code wheel, it would tell you a third thing that had a number underneath it. And then you typed in that number. And that proved that you had a legal copy of the game. With the first game, I think the second game too, I didn't really test it, but the first game, if you didn't put that in right, after maybe a week, you get stopped by the cops. And they would ask you to put in the number again. And if you didn't do it right, game over. Back to DOS.
Right,
it was great. I love that. The second game was even crazier. Basically, the second game, you use the map. It came with this big... Remember when games came with shit?
Yes, I do. Oh, boy.
It came with a big, huge fold-out map and a cardboard square with a hole, with a square middle in the middle of it. You had to, the game would tell you, put the upper edge of the map, put the upper edge of the square on this map coordinate, and then count how many red stars are in the square.
Yeah. That's bullshit.
Put that in.
I hate that sort of thing.
Wow. Yeah, that back in the day, the most common copy protection was open your manual to page 18 and tell me the first letter of
the 5th paragraph. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's better when it's creative. There's some things with maps. I mean, Star Control 2 has a. I mean, is it Star Control 1 or 2 has a star map, and you just find the names on the map?
I think so. Yeah, that Star Control 2 borrows a lot from these, which we'll talk about. But yeah, those games had crazy copy protection, but they're definitely, again, they're worth checking out. I don't recommend if you're going to play these, do not jump right to the second one because first one really, it doesn't just build the world. It like the events of the second game take place after the events of the first. So if you just jump right into the second, things will be like, what the fuck? Why do I care about this? Who are these people? So the first one does a much better job of building the world. So if you're going to play these, and they take hundreds of hours, like they're massive, massive games. Like I think the second time I played it, I drank a 6-pack of Jolt Cola. Do you know what Jolt Cola is?
Yes, I do.
I drank a 6-pack.
Where did you go back to the 90s for that?
This is the late 80s. I drank a 6-pack of Jolt Cola and stayed up for 5 days, 4 or 5 days playing Starflight.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I slept for a week. But pretty mostly. But yeah, these are huge games that take a massive investment in time. So if you're going to play these, make sure, and there's so many games to play, but if you're going to play these, they just take a long time. They're like Skyrim hugeness level of massive vividity. So if you're going to play these, I recommend you do. Yeah, you need a lot of time. Hundreds of hours. I don't even know if you can do a speed run of these games.
I mean, to be honestly, that pretty much applies to almost all the games on your list. I mean, space trading games are generally pretty long.
They are. So we've talked about Universe. There are 3 Universe games, and the last one came out in 1989.
I haven't touched any of them, so that's you.
I actually own physical copies of all 3 of them.
Really?
Because I'm nuts.
One thing that before anything, one thing that was on my list when I was doing my research, and you didn't mention, for Universe 2, it says that the base exploration is done as a text adventure.
Is it?
Apparently so. Hey, that's what I read. Don't take my word for it. Mm-hmm.
I have no idea. I never got that far. I'm just like, 3 hours to orbit. Fuck this. So I got shit to do. I got dishes to wash. So I did not get that far, but that's pretty amazing. I believe it. So we did talk about Hard Nova, which came out in 1990. Very, 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 very similar to Sentinel Worlds 1, which came out 2 years before. Now we're getting to 1990, so let's talk about the Lightspeed / Hyperspeed games. Which is interesting.
These are interesting. I have played both.
You can buy Hyperspeed on Steam right now, which is nuts.
That's true. That's right. It's
not on GOG, but Steam.
Well, it's Night Dive, right? Released them. Because they got a whole bunch of Microprose titles. It's a Microprose game.
I'm loving Night Dive for all the shit they're releasing.
Mm-hmm.
It's so.
There's going to be more coming too. They're getting big.
I know. I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited. But Hyperspeed and Lightspeed, they're almost exactly
They're pretty much the same game. Yeah.
Same game.
Co-designed by Sandy Peterson.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the guy who created the Call of Cthulhu RPG and made the
Andy Hollis. Holy shit!
Yeah, and Sandy Peterson is, well, he's kind of known for that and not known for that, but he designed a fair share of levels in Doom and Doom 2. Some of my favorite levels of Doom 2 he actually designed. So great guy.
I'm a huge fan of Andy Hollis for his Jane's flight sims, Longbow and Longbow 2. So I'm like, I didn't know Andy Hollis worked on these. So Hyperspeed, basically, you're flying a ship that's the size of Manhattan. Huge, cumbersome beast that doesn't really move well. Mm-hmm. It's very slow to turn or move up and down. But you basically, if I recall, you're trying to find, you're exploring the galaxy to try and find a new home.
I don't remember what the story is, but we should probably say that this is also, unlike the last few games that we've mentioned, this is actually, like a first-person 3D, simulator game. This is
first person, and there are 2 first-person modes. There's the flying the main ship, which is this big clunky thing, but there's also fighter drones you could launch that you also fly. Which is how you do combat. You also have turrets, so I guess there's 3. But in this game,
there's a big gimmick.
What's the gimmick?
Well, the gimmick is that you rearrange the parts of the ship.
Oh, right, yeah, that's
like the game's main mechanic. It's really weird. It's a weird decision.
It is, and if I recall correctly, the trade doesn't actually involve money, as in fact, it involves parts. It involves trading those parts for better parts.
And also those are the parts that get damaged when you get shot at.
Exactly, and then you have to find replacements. It's very.
But you're literally like you turn around and there's all of a sudden from the 3D thing you're like it scrolls off, and I remember it's been a long time, but you literally just get this sort of like screen full of like different modules that you can move around, and you can also shut them on and off because that's the way the energy is distributed. I don't know if I'm making sense right now. It's really hard.
No, you totally are.
But,
there was a power distribution thing, and you could turn certain things on and off to save power.
Yeah, so that's how you manage like everything in the game. Shields, whatever, like everything that pertains to your ship.
And a lot of the like your shields and your engines used similar components, so you had to carry extras on hand in case something broke. Yeah, the engineering part was also almost kind of like a puzzle. Like, oh, this fits here, and this fits here. This fits here to work. And so it was almost like its own little mini game of sorts in improving your ship. But this game, again, you're not trading for money like a lot of the other games. You're trading for parts or pieces of or certain or like I want to trade you. Like, I have a surplus of this part, and I need more of this part. Give me that. And so you go around talking to the other races, and you trade parts and improve your ship and certain parts, and you get better parts and stuff. So I haven't played this. I own it on Steam, and I haven't touched it. I just, as soon as it was available, I'm like, buy, because that's how I am. Because I have to own copies of things.
It's been a long time for me as well. So
yeah,
I don't even know how to like recommend it or not, because I remember very little about it. Like, I don't remember the difficulty. I obviously never got very far in it, so
yeah,
I don't know. It's just because it was the time where I didn't have manuals or anything else, so I didn't know how to play properly. But I know some people really like it though.
Oh yeah, I loved this back in the day. I played the fuck out of it. I don't think I finished it, and if I did, I don't remember the end. Again, I don't finish games because I have a short attention span, so it's rare for me to finish a game. So I don't know if I finished this one, but I played a lot of it, and it's fun because the ship you're flying is so massive; it can hold quite a bit, and you feel it when you're trying to fly. It's like, so it's kind of fascinating. You're flying this massive ship. So it's a neat game, and I would get it if you're interested in the genre and its history. Get it on Steam on sale. I think it actually might be on sale right now.
Well, this is not going to drop right now. This is probably going to be a while before I put this out. Yeah.
So yeah, that's Hyperspeed and Lightspeed, essentially the same game.
Yeah, I cannot quite picture what the things. I remember because Matt Barton has a few episodes with Sandy Peterson. And I think they talk about both, but I cannot quite remember anything that he said about it. So
yeah, I'm having a tough time differentiating between the two in my head.
I mean, they look exactly alike, even. Like,
yeah, I mean, the graphics are only a tad slightly improved in Hyperspeed, but I think beyond that, it's pretty much the same game. So moving on to the juggernaut of 1992.
Oh yes,
this is when I graduated college. That's how old I am. Star Control 2. Now this game, I love Star Control 2. I'm going to say that right off the bat, but it's almost part and parcel a copy of Starflight. In so many ways, it borrows from Starflight.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, it has everything, different races.
Different races. The big deal is the combat, the real-time combat.
Yes.
The first game.
Well, here's the thing. The first game was only combat.
Yeah, I mean, there was some kind of planet conquering thing, but that was like secondary to putting ships together and shooting each other.
It was just a combat. And then they just decided, basically, let's take Starflight and slap it on top of that, and that became Star Control 2. Only it's, I guess a bit more comedy heavy.
It's a lot funnier.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's very sarcastic, self-aware.
The Starflight games have their humor, but it's much more subtle. It's kind of like British humor almost.
Yeah, no, here it's in your face.
Drier. Yeah, here it's much more like American in your face humor.
It's great though. I mean,
yeah, of course.
Star Control 2 is one of the best PC games ever, and it's also very accessible.
Yeah, it's much more accessible than Starflight, which, I mean, that's fair. It came out 6 years later, so they had 6 years of UI improvements.
Mhm.
But I
But
honestly didn't like these as much as the Starflight games. I
well,
think
it's
it's
not the
because
same thing.
I
Yeah,
know, but at the
it's the
same time,
same
I'm
thing in
playing it.
concept, but
Right, but I'm
the
playing
flow
it.
is very different.
Right, but I'm playing it. I'm like, wow, this is so. I could be playing. So I don't dislike it. I love Star Control
Uh-huh.
2, but it just doesn't have as hollowed a point in my pantheon of amazing games. Like, it's not in my top five.
Really? Well,
Starflight's
it's not
in
in
my
my
top
top
five.
five. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, Star Control 2 is not in my top five either. But if
It's
I
in the
was
top
making
maybe
list,
20, but if I had to make a list, it'd be in the
I
top
mean,
maybe
there is
20.
actually a list of 100 DOS games behind me, and Star Control is on there. But there is no
Of course it's on.
there is no there is no like placement exactly, so I cannot tell you. It's somewhere halfway.
That's
Actually, my list is alphabetical, so what am I talking about? But I would like to say that Star Control 2 is on GOG, right? I'm pretty sure
Yes.
it has been.
Yes.
It's also is available on 3DO, if anybody remembers that thing.
It's
And
apparently,
it
according to Moby Games here, it's on 3DO, Android,
well,
GP2X.
it's because all of that stuff is GP2X is like an open platform.
Yeah.
For games, whatever, nobody cares anymore. It's like 10 years old now. But that's because at one point it was open sourced as the Orcon Masters, and
Right.
that's
You can still get for free.
oh yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. If you don't want to buy it, just go to the go get the open source one. It has all kinds of enhancements if you want, like the track remixes, which I wouldn't recommend. But but whatever.
I know, right?
It's an amazing game to me. Mostly, unlike again, we keep jumping, but this game is 2D and it doesn't look too great. All right, it's like sort of all the spaces are presented in flat space.
Right.
And you sort of
It's so charming.
It's
so charming.
It's great, but like you fly your little ship in the beginning, into planets. You can land on planets, and you can talk to all kinds of races and form alliances or not with them, and then you get to sort of build your little ship and fight other ships in pretty hardcore action arcade sequences where like the screen is like zooming in and out and crazy, and you're just hoping that you fired enough rockets, and like sometimes battles last literally like 5 seconds.
I know, because sometimes you'll be like boom boom done.
Yes. Like that's what it is, but it's great, and it's very story driven. It's pretty big. The music, it's one of those games with rare for PC mod music, all done by mod music enthusiasts of the time. It was outsourced, I believe, to people who knew and cared. So the soundtrack is great. And yeah, I think the action is great. I think the exploration is great. I think the story is great. So it's very accessible. Like that's the thing.
Sure.
Like it might not be modern, it's not modern by any means, but like you can, if you're into retro games and you've never played Star Control 2, I don't know what you're waiting. You should just download it. You don't even have to pay for it. If you really want to pay for it, pay for it. Get this Star Control 2 on GOG, and it comes with Star Control 1.
Support GOG if you can. Yes.
Yeah, but if you can afford it, it's free, and now on just about every platform apparently as well.
Now, am I remembering that the Star Control 2 also had, like, the first game? One of my favorite joys of the first game was getting with a friend and fighting each other on the same computer.
It's separate. It's like a separate
right, but you can do that.
Yeah, it's basically here's the thing. Like inside the second game, there's basically the same mode as the first game, so you can just do the action scenes with custom ships together.
I loved playing the race that had the flying saucer.
Oh, yeah.
Because one, they could stop on a dime. Like there's physics in this game, so you'll drift and and everything. So there's physics. You won't stop on a dime unless you're this one race. And they have these tiny little saucers, and they're not the toughest ship, but they're hard as fuck to hit, and they can teleport randomly all over the place. So I loved playing them and just pissing off my friends.
Also,
like, stop teleporting, Brian. No. Click, 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 click.
That's like the benefit of playing the remake, actually, that you can use the voice pack, the 3DO voice pack, and have all the races actually haven't been voiced, unlike in DOS version, which is silent. Well, not silent.
Like
Yeah,
3DO was kind of the most enhanced
yeah,
version.
3DO got the speech pack basically and the remixed music. I don't know how I feel about the remixed music exactly. And since then, you can also get like a different pack for the open source version with like a fan remixes, which are a bit better. But I like to stick with the original music. But the voice pack is actually really good because the voices for different races are pretty comical.
Oh dear Lord. Oh yeah. So guys, that game is really just a legend in the pantheon of DOS gaming and space DOS gaming. So if you haven't played it, go get it. Urquan Masters or on GOG. Get the original. They're worth owning. So the next game is very obscure. I never heard of it until recently. We're moving on to 1993's Command Adventures Starship.
No, never heard of it either.
Yeah, I did a Let's Play of it a while back, and it's a weird game. Like, apparently you land on planets to take them over, and then when you take them over, you take stuff off them and you trade that stuff to better your ship. But I could never really finish a planet because the game would always crash.
Oh.
So I never got that far.
It looks like the planet stuff is like RTS style, right?
It kind of is. Yeah. This is actually an interesting game in that it's trying to do a lot of things, and it's not terrible. It's just not the most stable game. So it's you can't buy this digitally. I'm only including it because it does involve trade, and I have played it, but I can't really recommend it because there are other better games to play. So let's move on. I mean, who the hell? I've never even what did Merit Studios do? Future Vision. They're the ones.
Merit is a publisher that published a lot of shit.
Right, but what the hell is Future Vision? That's who did that game. They did 3 games.
Yeah, I've heard of
Harvester.
Future Vision. Yep.
Harvester was one of
Yeah,
those?
so that's why it's published by Merit Software, because they were like together. They also probably did like part of that team did the Fortress of Dr. Adiaki and like other horrible games.
I heard that was terrible. I never actually played that one. So the big one there's 2 big ones in 1993 and one that's close to my heart. But the first big one in 1993 is the sequel to Elite, Frontier, Elite 2. I don't know why they didn't just call it Elite 2, Frontier, whatever.
I guess David Braben wanted to differentiate a little bit.
Yeah, for some reason, I've never been clear on why David Braben and Ian Bell parted ways.
I think it's pretty clear on the website because they were working on Elite 2 in the 80s, and I guess they didn't like the direction that project was taken. Like, they didn't like each other's input in that, so they could never basically just eventually ended up, like scraping the whole thing because neither of them were happy with what it was. And I think Braben eventually retained the rights to Elite name, but not actually. Like, they weirdly share the property of the first game, but not the name. Braben can make new Elites, obviously, and still does. And eventually he made Frontier, which was like what he wanted for Elite 2, which apparently was not what Ian Bell wanted.
And Frontier is an amazing game. I mean, in 1993, we had never seen anything.
It's very technically impressive.
Of this scope. I mean, you can land on planets. Planets have cities and settlements. There's also space stations.
It's
of various
beautiful
designs.
too.
Oh, it's a really gorgeous game, and there's
You get
so much to
sunsets, sunrises on the planets.
Yeah, and there's so much to do. I mean, there's the usual taxi mission and FedEx missions, but there's also assassination missions if you get good enough with combat. And there are, ambassadorial missions and all kinds of crap you can do in this game. It's an amazing virtual world. You can actually get like an exploration ship and just go off and just like scoop fuel from the sun and just keep going.
It's a real sort of like open world space adventure.
Yeah.
Very, very heavy sim.
Very heavy. I mean, the controls are crazy.
Yes.
Combat is terrible.
Yes, I am terrible at that game. I like playing it, but I've never gotten anywhere in that game.
It took me so long to get even decent at the combat because it's like full. Like the new Elite is not full Newtonian physics. It's a little arcadey, but that makes it more accessible and fun. This thing is full arcadey, so you'll be like doing this jousting thing where you'll like fly at each other, shoot a little bit, pass each other, and have to turn around and reverse thrust and so. It's the combat is just jousting back and forth. It's not that fun. But the saving grace is the rest of the game with the trade and the missions and just the detail. That's the fun part. And it's really just an incredible. I mean, people are still making versions of it. I mean, Elite Dangerous is obviously a more iteration of it. But if you want something more honest to the original Frontier, you have Oolite. And not Oolite, Pioneer, which is a more modern kind of version. There's also it was called Paragon. Now it's called Jump Drive. You can get on Steam, which is also very similar to this game. But yeah, this game back in the day, I mean, the universe is, I think, Moby Games is saying right here, 100 million planets and moons.
Yeah, Jesus.
I don't even know if the new Elite gets that big. This game, and this is only on a few floppy disks for fuck's sake. This game is just incredible and it's massive and you could just lose. I did lose myself in this for a long time until one of the other 1993 games came out and kind of stole its thunder.
Right.
We'll talk about that in a minute. Elite 2 is an amazing game, but it's hard to recommend to more modern players because it is very.
Yeah, I will say. I mean, it might be a bit less forgiving than. I mean, a bit more forgiving than the first game, but even by 1993 standards, it's still really difficult.
Right. The next two games are much more forgiving in terms of playability, and I would recommend those. Even though this one, the one I'm talking about. I love this game, but you can't buy it digitally. It's called Nomad.
Oh, yeah. I've never played this game, and I don't even know what it actually looks like, but I think what I know about it, and I'm hoping I'm not confusing it with some other game, that's a game that Papyrus Software did a bit of work for. No, they didn't exactly develop it, but they did some kind of a 3D engine work for it.
Well, they are mentioned as co-developers with Intense Interactive on Moby Games here, so they did apparently have a hand in it. It was published by Game Tech in 1993. Didn't make a huge splash, but it's an amazing exploration, combat, and trading game. And the amazing thing about this game is the trade is fantastic because you will fly from one planet to another, and there'll be other ships flying around, and you can hail individual ships, talk to their captains, and trade with each individual captain. And again, there's really no money. You're trading things for other things. So when you start the game, you're a human pilot that got like kind of the ship crashes on Earth and it gets repaired, and then you fly it off and it gets taken to another part of the universe. And you're like, holy shit! But you have stuff you can trade with you that these other races don't have, like a watch and a chocolate bar. So you will get some decent shit for that stuff. But you will also find all kinds of shit on your travels. You can't really land on planets, but you can land probes on planets that can do mining and other kinds of stuff. But you primarily trade with other races in orbit. And you could talk to inhabited planets through like a video communication system. And I think you can trade with them too. And there's a race that there's some kind of mechanized race. Oh, yeah, they're called the Korok, that these other races are fighting against. And you are brought in to help with that. That's why the ship was sent to Earth. They're kind of like, hey, we need the humans to help us destroy these evil androids. And it's a very accessible game because the controls are pretty simple. You don't really, when you do have combat, it's mostly mouse driven. And it's pretty much pointing and shooting. It's not simplistic. It's a little simplistic, but it's fun and it's easy to get into. But most of the time, you're selecting destinations and things from a menu of numbers. So it's a pretty easy game to get into. The graphics are very charming, very 1993 graphics. But it's a game that, like, for me, it has an emphasis on exploration, discovering new planets and stuff. So because it does that so well, it has a special place in my heart. So sadly, you can't buy it digitally, but if you have any interest, track it down because it's really a great, great game that I just love. The only problem is the save game system is funny. So if you die, you lose everything. You'll start like if you had this great missile launcher and a bunch of cargo and you die,
Right.
you lose it all,
Well,
and
that's
you
fucked
can't
up.
really get your save back. So 1993, they didn't give a shit about you. So sorry, they did kind of, but yeah, it can be frustrating. So you want to like make sure you save your game often, and even then it doesn't always load. So you got to be careful with that. But it's a great game. But again, it was overshadowed by our next entry in 1993, which is really, I think, one of the pinnacles of the entire space trading genre. And that's Wing Commander Privateer. Now, if you have not played any of the Wing Commander games, do not start with this one.
No.
Don't. You want to play them in order of how they were released. So you start with Wing Commander 1, and and all that shit, all those special operations.
Or you can play Wing Commander 3. I feel that if you're a newcomer, 3 works really well. It's easy to get into. It has fancy.
You're probably right.
Has Luke Skywalker and a bunch of other really good actors.
But this is a step back graphically and such from that game.
Well, I mean, yes, and I was just speaking generally. I mean, like if you haven't played Wing Commander games, you don't want to start with Privateer. But no. I will also say, if you've never played any Wing Commander games and you're not like a super hardcore player, first Wing Commander is also really difficult. So
it is.
I will say 3 is like a perfect entry point because it's the last really good game in the series.
Hey, 4 is my favorite.
Really?
I can't. Oh, I love 4
as a game.
Or
as a movie. It's a good movie, but the game is kind of it's there.
Well, the game was. The missions weren't as good as 3, but I'm a little biased because it's got my favorite fighter in anything, the Dragon Fighter, which was that cloaking badass thing.
Right.
Oh my god!
I don't know. I just kind of the 4th game to me seems a little bit lacking. It's a bit too linear. Well, it's and kind of. I don't know. I like seeing the cockpit.
This is the eternal debate. A lot of people have.
Really?
Is 3 better? Is 4 better?
Really?
No one cares about 5.
I've kind of.
4 better.
I've always felt that. Is there a debate? I kind of thought 3 was like universally hailed as the last.
I think 3 it hit people harder because it was the first really good game of its type. It like was much more like boom, and you're like full motion, amazing video, like wow, like this has got actors in it, like actors we actually give a shit about.
And the acting is really decent too. Surprisingly, if you especially
good, the writing is good.
You think about it, it's like 94, and then like in 95, you get like still so many awful FMV games, Phantasmagoria.
Like Space Pirates and Night. What was that one with the chick from Different Strokes?
Night Trap.
Something. Night Trap. Oh,
yeah. But that was filmed in the 80s, actually.
Was that the 80s?
The game didn't come out till 93, but it was actually filmed in like 88.
No.
Because it was originally made for the arcade machine that was gonna run off VHS tapes, along with like a bunch of other titles. But eventually they reused the footage and then shot some new stuff. It's really convoluted. But the thing is, like some bullshit game like Phantasmagoria actually cost more than Wing Commander 3, and I to this day cannot imagine how can this possibly be like $500,000 more. And it's like, what was it to rent that fucking hangar that they apparently shot in because of all the echo that ended up? Because Phantasmagoria, the actors are like from your local, I don't know, street corner. Are they even actors or even people? I don't know what they are. Pieces of wood in wigs, and like here in Wing Commander, you got fucking John Rhys Davies, who like in so many shitty movies, but always gives 100%. You know what I mean? Like he's fucking like no matter what fucking direct-to-video movie or TV or whatever the fuck he is, like he's a movie ball movie. He's always acting. Here's he acting. We got fucking Mark Hamill. We got what's his face? Tom Wilson. I don't want to call him Biff, but you know, because it's a bit, it's disrespectful. Malcolm McDowell also fuck
the captain.
Yes, I also don't know. I don't know his name. He's great.
I love him, and I can't. He was the last movie he was in was Liar Liar, and I can't.
What? He's been in a lot of stuff.
No, he died right after Liar Liar.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that why?
He was in a lot of stuff before that.
Yeah, I was like, I remember seeing so much shit with him.
No, he died right after. Farrell? Not Farrell. Terrell? No, what the fuck was his name? Anyway, would love him. Love that guy.
Ginger Lynn. Ginger Lynn is in that fucking game.
Oh, and Tim Curry did the voice of Hobbs.
Yes. Oh my god. So like, it's great. The CGI background looked pretty good.
Yeah. So Wing Commander 3 is great, but Privateer.
Oh yes, that's what we were talking about.
In the entire Wing Commander pantheon, I think is probably my favorite of all the games.
To many people, like it is. I remember seeing. I have a memory coming over to my friend's place, and he got the. Was that one of those games where the speech pack was sold separately?
I believe at first, yeah.
Yeah,
eventually
originally before the CD version. So, and he had the speech pack for Privateer. And like they specifically bought like new speakers for it, to show off the fucking bastard. Yeah, like because originally I think there is VO just in the intro, in the very beginning of Privateer, but there isn't any voices in the rest of the game. So the speech pack added the voices like mid battle and stuff is what was most important part, you know, to me at least. Yeah, it was cool.
So Privateer takes place. It's I don't know exactly where in the Wing Commander timeline it takes place, but it was released after Wing Commander 2, and it uses a similar, if slightly improved engine. Really just stylish game. Also a very difficult game. Like,
yes,
I know people,
especially in the beginning, like it's hard to get into.
My podcast co-host, he like almost threw his joystick across the room because he could just not kill any of the bad guys at first. And it's tough because you really do start with the Toyota Yaris of spaceships, the Taurus, which is just a bucket with engines and a couple of dinky little lasers on it. I think the game has 4 ships total, but you start with this rust bucket. You don't even have a jump drive to leave the system. So what you do is there are 2 guilds in the game, the Merchants Guild and the Mercenaries Guild, and you can start taking missions for them to trade and kill pirates and do missions and trade equipment. And eventually you can buy a better ship and you can buy a jump drive and leave the system. And it just opens up this sector of the Wing Commander universe that has Korathi in it every now and then, but isn't really on the front lines like in the other games. It's kind of back. So, but the variety of the game is amazing. Like there's a naval base you can land at. There's a what's that planet called? Oxford, that looks all British. And there's a bunch of planets you land on. They all have different equipment and not different equipment, but they have different prices and they have a different economy. But what made this so compelling is because this was an open-ended game in this universe where the previous games, you played one character and you just go through mission. But here you got to choose where you went.
Right.
And it was great seeing like you'd run into military fighters that, oh my God, I flew that one in Wing Commander 2, you know, but you're not in the military, so you're seeing someone else flying it.
Well, it was like a cross between, it's actually an interesting decision. I don't know how they arrived to decision to make this game, but it's a cross between Wing Commander and Elite, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and it nails it takes what's best about both of those games and makes it even, I think, better. Because it's a difficult game. It's 1993. Games were more difficult then. That's just a blanket statement.
Yeah.
But it's also an amazing game. Like this is one of those games where you finish the main story and you can just keep playing. Like I played this for hundreds of hours even after I was done the main story. And the nice thing about this game is there is a story, but you don't hit it right away. You
Right.
like build up your ship and you build up your finances, and then eventually you'll meet someone at a bar, which is also where you can get missions, and they'll like go here and do this, and then the story will begin. But the thing is, it's not just story mission after story mission after story mission. It's like you do a story mission. It's like, okay, if I need you again, I'll find you. And then you can go off and do your own thing again and make more money. And eventually there's 4 ships in the game. You start off with the Taurus, and then you have the Orion and what's the other name of the ship? There's 2 like trading type ships. And then there's the Centurion, which is like a civilian fighter. Like it's almost military grade, this thing. And it's great because at one point you get this alien gun that you have to fight off an alien invasion with. Like you've never seen these aliens before. They're not even Kilrathi. Like who the fuck are these guys? But you get a gun that you can like slay anything with, and you need it to kill these aliens. Then there's an expansion to the game called Righteous Fire. And the first thing they do, they take your fucking alien gun away and you never fucking get it back. Fuck that noise, I said to myself. I never even finished Righteous Fire. I was like, you took my gun. Fuck you. I love that thing. I'm not playing you now. But Privateer, it really is one of the best games of the genre because it really strikes a great balance between playability and style. And accessibility. And so you'll be flying back and forth between these very different looking planets that have different star bases, and they're for the time they were gorgeous. I still think they're gorgeous, but I'm a little, rose-colored nostalgia glasses. But it's like you'll land like one base will be a naval base, and then this other base will look very Blade Runner-y, and you're on this like future-y looking world. And then the next base will like, oh, I'm in a park on Oxford or whatever. So all the planets are different. There's I forget how many planets. It's a pretty good size. It's not like Frontier size. It's more contained than that, but it's a good size universe. And the Galaxy, that's the name of the other ship, is the big cargo ship with a rear turret. That was the one. That was the Galaxy. The Orion was more the tanky thing. But you can also swap out equipment. You can do trade missions and get more money. Like I think I stopped playing when I had like 3 million credits. And that was with the most upgraded Centurion you could get. And I just, I never got bored. But I mean, the missions, one thing that a lot of these missions have in common, a lot of these games have in common is the missions can get very samey. Like, fly this cargo here,
right.
Fly these people here. They can get a little samey and grindy, but I love that, so I'm fine with it. But, even I have my limits. But this game, I must have put 400 or 500 hours into it back in the day. Like, I think I almost failed my second semester of college because of this game. Because I'd come home, I wouldn't do any homework. I'd play this for 8 hours and go to bed, because it was just that good. So you can do it. And all he says, and play Wing Commander 3 first, and then play this. And that's not a bad introduction to that world. But I played the first 2 and then played this. And
first 2 Wing Commanders are great. One day I'm going to do a whole separate podcast on Wing Commander, because there's just so many games. Might as well just do a whole podcast just on the series.
There's about a dozen.
Yeah.
No, there's about 10.
If you count all the spin-offs,
there's Academy and there's Armada,
whatever the fuck.
And so there's almost about 10, I'd say.
Yeah,
but
so there's enough. There's enough to fill the time.
There's enough to fill a whole podcast. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Wing Commander is a pretty expansive universe, and this gave you a glimpse into that universe that you never thought you'd get, that you never had before, and it just blew your mind back in the day. So this is like really just one of the piece de la resistance.
Yeah,
it's
definitely recommended, and it's on GOG.
Oh, yeah. And thank God it is on GOG. Yes, it is on GOG. Now there are a couple of other variations of this for Windows. There's ASCII Sector, which is a full ASCII version of Privateer. I'm not even making that up.
Wow.
And there's also, what's it called? Gemini Gold, which is a more modern Windows version of this.
I have no idea.
But it's nowhere near. It's not easier. you would think, oh, more modern versions, they're going to be a little easier. Nope. No, they're just as ball crunchingly difficult. So just know what you're getting into if you're going to play this. It's going to take a while to get out of that first system and get good enough at combat to start dealing damage to the bad guys. It's worth it though, because it's very satisfying once you kill your first bad guy in this game. Very satisfying. So we only have a couple left, and the next one I've barely played. It's called Star Reach. It came out in 1994.
Never heard of it, and I checked some places out looking for opinions, and somebody described it as Master of Orion meets Star Control.
Yeah, that's what they were trying to go for, and it was put out by Interplay. For some reason, Moby Games has Space Federation, so maybe that's what it was called overseas. But here it was called Star Reach. And it tries to be a kind of tradey, strategy, adventure-y thing. And it never really sunk in. Like, I played it back in the day. I tried it. It just never clicked. You know, it never clicked with me.
Well, it looks like it's just sort of like a tradey strategy Master of Orion style. Yeah. And when there's time to do some battles, they're like first star control. Like you just shoot shit in space. Star control-y. I mean, I think one of the reasons this game never really went anywhere is because there were other games that had come out that did whatever they were doing better. Right.
Like Master of Orion.
Well, Master of Orion is Master of Orion, so yeah.
Yeah, Master of Orion did its thing better. Star Control did its thing better, you know. So, like, I think it kind of felt like an also ran, and so I don't think it stayed in the minds of people very much. And it didn't get the best reviews either. I'm looking on Moby Games, like PC Gamer gave it a 70, CGW gave it 2 stars out of 5. So it wasn't even that great a game, and also a testament to how obscure and no one gives a shit about this game is that there are no user reviews on Moby Games for it. So that tells you right there, no one gives a shit. But it's got trade. That's why I included it. The final game we're going to talk about.
Oh, are we?
It's a down note. I know.
I don't have much to say about it, mostly because it doesn't really work.
It's a piece of shit. Okay, so remember we were talking about Frontier Elite 2 a while back? Take that game, try and pretty up the graphics, and then make it about 80% buggier, and you have Frontier First Encounters, which is the third in the original Elite trilogy. Mm-hmm. And it was almost part and parcel a copy of the second game, except that it had some full motion video bits when you talk to the people on the planet. And the graphics were a bit more shadier, but it was a mess.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
It's weird that it took 2 years as well and came out, so unfinished, but it's like, what improved exactly?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, I think it had some different ships, but I think that's about it. And again, the graphics were, I can't even say they're an improvement. Like, they tried making them more pixely.
To be honest with you, I read like a big interview with David Braven in Retro Gamer, where he actually pointed out like all the technical technical differences in between First Encounters and Frontier. I couldn't tell you what they are, but apparently it's quite a few, like as far as the physics engine is concerned and whatever.
Didn't really feel that different.
But that's the thing, like it doesn't really feel like anything changed really, and it looks exactly the same.
It really does.
In 1995, like I can see that graphics kind of thing in 1993. Yes, it's very impressive, it's very pretty, but like 2 years later, essentially the same game, and the one that crashes 30 seconds in. Depending on your sound card and memory manager, no bueno.
It's really a shame because the Elite series was cruising on a high point until this. Like Frontier was a bit buggy, but it was nowhere near as buggy as whatever this was.
Yeah, it's one of those games like legendarily, like one of those games that was like broken. Like it was broken. It was unplayable. But most people could not play it.
Right. I wouldn't be surprised if this is why there was such a big gap between this and Elite Dangerous. This probably killed the franchise for a while because it was so legendarily bad. It's a shame that we have to end on this note.
Well, we
because
don't
we've been
have. We don't really have to end on this.
We
note.
should.
I have a question for you. Well, a couple.
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. So, we obviously we're not going to recommend the third Elite game to anyone.
No.
Not that anyone would really want to, but I do have a question about emissions from your list. How about them Mega Traveler games? Do they belong?
You know what? I never played those.
Yeah,
did they have trade? I was looking through my list and trying to look for games that had trade. I never played them. So let me take a
I'm certain they do. I mean, it's been a while, and they're more heavy on RPG story than anything else. But essentially, they're just like the same as some of the earlier games that we looked at, where it's sort of an RPG exploration, but also involves some trading, just because you can go to different worlds and buy.
Oh God, there is trading.
Buy
I
the
don't know if
goods.
I missed that. Oh God,
I don't have much experience with those, but I know, and I don't think a lot of people actually do either. Like, they're not really well remembered games, but I know some people really like them.
There are 2 user reviews for the first one on Moby Games, so that tells you something.
Right.
But somehow I never played these, and so I'm sorry. I feel kind of bad. This completely just over my head.
There you go. I should have given. Well, no need to be sorry. Here we are. I just remembered in the last second. If you didn't play them, so neither of us really gonna have much input in this. If you, dear listeners, played the Mega Traveler games, leave us a comment.
There's 2 of them apparently. One came out. The first one was 90, and the second one was 91. And they look pretty detailed. I mean, I'm going to play them eventually, but I didn't even realize they had trade. I don't know why I didn't realize that. I think I thought of them more as like more traditional RPGs, and I didn't even think of trade. But I feel like I failed a little bit in forgetting about them.
Well, whatever. I never played them. It's that, and then the final DOS swan song of the I don't even know we should be bringing it up, but Privateer 2 actually also was released for DOS and Windows.
Oh, God,
but it had a standalone DOS release, which actually was more stable than the Windows one.
I forgot about the DOS version of that. Okay, folks, if you want to play a game that has a great cast but a shitty ass game, Privateer 2: The Darkening is your game. I mean, it's got fucking Clive Owen, William Hurt.
Yeah, but they all act badly. The only one who doesn't act, also David Warner, Christopher Walken.
I love David Warner so
David
much.
Warner is the only one who again, David Warner and John Rhys Davis are both have been in so much like shit, but they're always committed 100%. You know, they're never
always good.
They're never hamming it up. They just deliver like professional fucking actors. And David Warner is the only like anchor in Privateer 2 that doesn't. I mean, Walken doesn't even look like he wants to be there. Kind of like the Ripper, like almost, like the same caliber of Walken performance, where it's like, what am I doing? Where's my money?
And, like Clive Owen, I love Clive Owen.
He's really young.
But he hasn't aged. Have you noticed that?
He looks the same.
He looks exactly the same. But yeah, they seem bored.
Yeah.
Like he and John Hurt were just like, whatever. But the game is batshit insane. It's stupid. Here's how stupid this game is. If you want to trade anything, you have to hire a freighter to carry the trade goods. So basically, you're creating your own escort mission anytime you want to trade something. And anyone who plays space simulators know that escort missions are the worst.
Well, in every game genre.
In any game
genre, really. Yeah. Even, it doesn't have to be in space.
So you make your own fucking escort mission anytime you want to trade something. And then if you run into bad guys, you can't run away. Like a lot of games, you can run away from the bad guys. If you hit your afterburner long enough, they will stop chasing you. Or you can jump away eventually if your hyperdrive spins back up or whatever. But with Privateer 2, you have to kill all the bad guys before you can leave. And sometimes you can't. Or sometimes your freighter will get blown up before you do. And it's like, I hate you. And then, like, whenever you jump to a planet, it jumps you so far away, you have to, like, sit there for 10 minutes before you can even get close enough to contact the planet to land. Just a lot of bad design decisions.
Yeah. It's a terrible
Chris
Roberts'
terrible
brother, right?
Was that?
It was.
Oh, Aaron.
Yeah,
Yeah.
was it Aaron Roberts' game? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well,
Yes.
there you go.
I started a series for my own blog called Hate Playing, and that was the first game I played, uh, because it's so bad.
It's bad.
It's really one of my least favorite, not just space games, but games ever. Because Privateer, the first Privateer, was so good, and then they released this. I don't even think it was supposed to be a Privateer game. They just kind of slapped the name on there because we've got this. It needs recognition. Privateer. And it's so bad. It's on GOG.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to buy it.
No, don't do it.
Don't. Unless you have money to burn, curiosity at the yin yang, and are a space game collector like me, don't even touch Privateer 2.
Even FMV, I mean it's high quality FMV, but I don't like the stylistic choices that they make, like the way they shoot things, like a lot of Dutch angles and like weird handheld zooms. Like it looks like a 90s commercial for the most part, and it robs it like of any sort of like natural flow. It just looks fucking cheesy. They try to be all serious or bored, I can't really tell, but like that weird stylistic choices that are made like are not fucking helping it. Like in Wing Commander 3 on 4, especially 4, like felt like maybe a TV movie. You know what I'm saying? Like the lighting wasn't corny, like especially in 4, like everything was sort of spot on. You got sets, you got costumes.
Yeah,
nobody
exactly.
fucking tilted the camera and shook it for no reason. But Privateer 2, it's like, oh my god, let's give everybody shiny clothes, and then they just fucking shake the camera.
And people are dancing in the corner for no reason.
Yeah,
and someone's crying in the corner for no. Like, what is this?
It's like I don't know who made any, like who's responsible for it. It's a mess, like all around.
It felt like they were trying to go for like a futury, Blade Runner-y, edgy quality.
Yeah, well, it didn't fucking work. So
it ended up just being a joke.
Yeah,
it's a total
it's
joke.
bad.
So yeah, we're kind of ending the whole thing on a couple of down notes, but whatever. I mean, the genre went on into Windows and survived quite well.
Yeah, and it's even now. I mean, it used to be for a while one of those like semi-dead genres that you would like see like a sort of like another game try to dethrone Elite. Like what were those games? Like there's been a whole bunch of them, like X, were they just called X? Fuck. Like
Jumpgate came close to doing an Elite/Privateer online, and it's still a good game. You can actually play it today. But that's the closest we had for a long time. I mean, we had Space Rangers, which was a great game. Space Rangers was great, and we had Independence War 2, which was a really amazing game. But yeah, for most of the 2000s and even into the early 2010s, it was very slim pickings. I mean, most of the games we got were from European companies, and a lot of those were very questionable.
Yeah,
like Dark Star 1, terrible. The Tomorrow War, awful. But then you had some weird, interesting stuff like Paragon 2, which is amazing.
But, I mean, actually, I haven't played the second one. I played the first one. Pretty much the. Well, I guess as far as Privateer clones, those are like the Russian Privateer.
Yeah.
It happens to come out pretty early on in the Russian game dev history because it dropped in 97. And its gimmick was it was basically an easier ripoff of Privateer, essentially. The combat was very easy because it was point and click. But all the planets were like the planets and stations were actually like first person FPS style.
Yeah.
I
have a copy of it somewhere.
Of the first one?
The first one, yeah, I have a copy of it. I just haven't played it. I know. It's one of those obscure Russian things. There's also Paragon Iron Strategy, which was an RTS.
Well, it's an RTS, like
offshoot
on the planet.
But then you had Paragon 2, which was a mouse-driven first-person space sim / first-person shooter where you could actually run around ships and run around planets.
Well, it's the same thing. I mean, Paragon 2, I think I've only seen very little of it, but it looks just like a hardware accelerated 3D remake of the first game. To be honest with you,
you can get it for $1 right now.
Really?
Yeah, $1.
Does it work on the modern PCs?
Sure. I have a video of it. It's on Steam.
I think first Paragon functions pretty well on modern Windows, except for the first-person shooter sequences aren't frame limited. So if you have,
wow, yeah.
so those will really
crazy.
Yeah, those are going to be crazy. You're going to get shot at a lot. But the space I mean, it's Russian game dev in the mid 90s was weird. I mean, Paragon is probably, it's one of those things that everybody loved when it came out, because it was like it was a Russian game. It was big and it looked very polished, but like in retrospect you look at it now and you're like, it's pretty easy, it's very linear, it's very FMV like. The first person shooter sequences are bad and unnecessary, just tedious. It was one of those things, but we were proud that we made Russian Privateer. That's really all that it was.
So that was fun. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for being here. Always a pleasure, and of course I welcome you to come back, and I'm sure so would the listeners. Do you have anything to I know you do, but where can, if people feel a deficiency of space games in their life, where can they go?
Oh, well, thank you for asking. You can find everything at spacegamejunkie.com. You can also find me on Twitter at spacegamejunkie. It's also youtube.com/spacegamejunkie, which is where most of my stuff is. I do weekly Let's Plays of old and new space games. Like next week, I'm doing Spacebucks, for example. So I did Rules of Engagement a while back. I did TIE Fighter. So I love the DOS gaming. That's how I grew up. So please stop by spacegamejunkie.com or the Twitter or the YouTubes and say hello. I'm very friendly. So thanks, man.
All right. Well, and me, you can find me at Das Nostalgic on Twitter is the number one place, or anywhere else where you can use a search engine of your choice to look for Das Nostalgia. I'm almost guaranteed to be there. And thank you, Brian, for being here, and thank you, dear listeners, for listening, and hopefully we'll see each other again on another Das Nostalgia podcast. And remember your gaming history. Goodbye.
Bye.